All right, here we go. This is class number 5. We are going to talk about your plan. So giving you some guidance on how to truly develop a plan, school and work plans, and a get home bag. So your plan. To plan smartly, you have to know your hazards. You have to know what you might be faced with in order to figure out what to expect and how to get ready for it. So this is a document that Seattle started a long time ago. They update it every year, every 2 years. This is a list of the top 18 hazards faced by Seattle. Earthquake is always at the top since I've been doing this, and I'm assuming it always will be, not because it happens that often, but because if it would happen, the things we depend on are messed with. Those are the top hazards. You will notice that the ones that are in red, and that's 1 through 5, 7, and 9, we shelter in place. There is not a lot of evacuation here in Seattle. We're a big city. We have lots of bridges. We have lots of water around us. It's hard to evacuate. There's just a great many of us, and we can't all fit on the roads at the same time. So for all of these top 7 hazards, we are expected to shelter in place. It's the smartest thing to do, which is why getting ready for an earthquake prepares you for so many of these other hazards. Why do I need a plan? Why can't I just make this up on the fly? It's because communications, we're expecting them to be greatly disrupted, and we don't think well when we're put under stressful situations. We are not the SEAL teams. We are not Rambo. Not everybody thinks like that. In fact, the vast majority of people do not panic after a disaster. They just move very, very slowly. They're a little catatonic. They don't always do the smartest thing right away. If you can't think clearly after a disaster, and none of us will be thinking clearly, having a plan really makes it much easier. You've at least thought through this while you're smart and you have all your faculties about you, and then you can rely on that plan because it made sense when you made it and you were thinking clearly. So that's why we need to plan, for no other reason other than you're not going to be able to communicate, so you can't make it up on the fly, and we really are not thinking clearly after a disaster. Sometimes there's just not time. You need to react really, really quickly, like a house fire, which is why they encourage you to do fire drills and that kind of stuff. So you're also building muscle memory, meaning if you do this enough times, either physically do it or think about it enough times, you will be one of those people that has a much better chance of actually taking the right steps right after a disaster, because it's already kind of built into your psyche that this is what we do. So building muscle memory, that's kind of the only reason I ever think about disasters for my own family, is because I know the more I think about it, the less I'll have to think about it when it happens. It will just be kind of ingrained. And peace of mind, that's the driving force for me for a lot of things. Anything that makes me feel better, I'm all into doing. So I want you to start with this scenario. Think about a Thursday, middle of January, 3 in the afternoon. It's dark, it's cold, it's rainy. Everyone in your household is out and about, whether you've got kids in school or stopping at the grocery store on your way home from work, just stepping into your gym or out of your gym, but everybody is scattered and there's a strong earthquake. If you could talk to your household members at that time, what would you decide to do? Where would you decide to get together as a household? Would it be back at your home? Maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe there's a much smarter place to go than back to your house. Maybe there's an interim place you go before you go back to your house. It'll be very different for every household, but think through that scenario, that Thursday afternoon when everybody's out and about. Where would you go? How would you get together? And then take away your ability to communicate and figure that plan out. And that's your plan. So this is the Forrest family plan. This is my household. So I live in Northeast Seattle. I'm there most of the time. I have a teenager who used to go to school in the Seattle Center. And then my partner, my husband, works down in Beacon Hill. So Ann at the top, Dad in the bottom, and T for teenager in Seattle Center. So this is our plan. Earthquake happens, everybody knows to drop cover and hold on. We check on those around us, render any first aid if we need to. We control our utilities because all 3 of us know how important that is, and hopefully everybody on the call does. We will communicate with each other, and that is a simple text. We're going to tell them our condition, our location, our plan, and the date and the time we sent the text. We will also include our out of town contact on our text chain. And for me, for our family, that is my mother-in-law in Las Vegas. Along with texting the other people in our family, we also text her, and she just watches the text string to make sure that information is going back and forth and we're able to communicate. And if she sees that it doesn't look like the texts are going through, then she forwards them down to people on the ground. So she's our conduit if we need it. So this is where our plan really kicks in. My husband down in Beacon Hill is actually in the healthcare world. So he is going to be expected to stay at work. So he doesn't get to come home right away. He already knows that. Everybody knows that. It's just how it is. When he's done here, Dad is able to walk to the teenager. It's about 3 hours. It's a long, arduous walk. Eventually, he will walk up, grab the teen. They provide aid because, again, both of them are skilled, especially my husband, skilled in first aid and understands pee and poo and all the other kind of stuff, what to do with utilities, so they can help out. They possibly have to spend the night. It just depends on what time of day it is and whether or not it's getting dark. And then they're going to look around for information on bridges, whether that's listening to the emergency radio that my husband has with him. He also carries a GMRS radio with him. It's at work, but he would pick it up and take it with him on his walk north. So trying to get information on bridges, how to get across the canal, which is difficult, but hopefully he'll get some good information and they'll know that we'll be able to figure out the safest place to cross. And then the walk home from Seattle Center up to Northeast Seattle is at least 4 hours. And that's probably on the wishful side. It's probably going to be a lot longer. I definitely did a little bit of research. This is not official. It was just me looking at what I could look at. I looked at liquefaction zones on either side of the canal, and I looked at the bridges that span this water. And I believe for my family that the smartest place for them to try and cross is the Montlake Cut. There's no bridge there, but I think it will be safe-ish to cross. So if Andrew can't get any information about where's the smartest place to go, then I think the Montlake Cut probably a really good place to try. So that's what Andrew knows. If he hears something better from the hub system or through the GMRS radio or just regular radio stations, then great. So that's our plan. You need to factor in elderly parents if you have them, pets if you have them. Like I said, maybe heading back home is not the smartest place to be. Maybe meeting halfway or meeting somewhere else would be smarter than heading back home. It just depends on your own situation. So we're going to talk briefly about schools. All of the Seattle public schools, and I would assume all the private ones as well, have to have something called a reunification plan. And this is how they're going to make sure that the right kid goes home with the right adult after a disrupted dismissal. Typically it's 2:45 and all the third graders are standing out there on the sidewalk, and you've got some parents that are driving up, you've got, some kids that are walking home and other kids that are getting on school buses. So the process is the same every single day, 2:45, everybody knows what to expect. Well, if there's an earthquake or a gas leak in the building or a fire nearby, that normal routine of dismissing is just messed up completely. And parents will arrive when they arrive, panicked and frightened and anxious, and it's just going to be chaos. So schools have to have something called a reunification plan. In my demonstration here, the kids will gather somewhere and they're trying to get out of visibility of the parents. They're going to probably huddle in the gym if that's a safe place to be, because they don't want the kids and the parents seeing each other through a window and both sides are kind of panicky. So all the kids are, they're hanging out with their favorite teachers, and the teachers are doing their amazing job of keeping them calm and occupied and all that kind of stuff. So kids are sequestered. Parents gather outside the building. They're not allowed in. The building truly goes into lockdown. They shut down every single door. There is one way in and one way out, and that's it. And it is closely monitored, and you do not get in to get your child until you can show an ID. And that ID has to match the name on that piece of paper that says these people are allowed to take my child home. And the parents, the adults and the kids are paired up one by one, which is why this takes forever. Don't get to run into Mrs. Johnson's third grade class and pick up Johnny by the hand and run back out. It is very tightly controlled and very anxiety producing, especially if you're not expecting it. Adult and child are paired up, and they usually leave out the back door. They exit the building some secret way, one pair at a time, so that this pair doesn't have to walk past all these adults. Because the adults are going to say, how's Jenny? How's Denisha? How's Johnny? They're going to quiz this little kid about their kid. So parent and child exit secretly, and they go off to do whatever it is they need to do. Maybe it's pick up another child. Maybe it's pick up the dog from the dog sitter. Maybe it's go home. So that's the school's reunification plan. Every school has it. They've had these plans for a couple of years now, and they're very slow to roll them out. They're very slow to get parents to practice them. So the first time most parents are going to hear about this is when they're standing outside banging on the door because they want to get in and get their kid. Our last topic tonight is a get home bag. This is the bag that will help you walk home from wherever you are, whether it's work or school, well, not school, unless you're like in college, you're an older person, but the gym, your church, wherever you're hanging out, this is what you put in the back of your car or you put in your commuter bag. I'm not going to go through this list because I'm going to send this out in the email at the end. A little bit of food, a little bit of water, rain poncho, whistle, some cash, that kind of stuff. Don't forget the navigation apps. Those were assigned a couple weeks ago. They work offline as long as you download the map ahead of time. That will be very helpful for walking home from wherever you are after a disaster. This is a picture of some of the stuff that's in mine. Don't forget to write down those important phone numbers. Once you put this stuff together, it is not very big at all. I put mine in underneath my seat. It's not even in the back of my car. It's not even in the trunk. It's underneath the seat. So it really doesn't take up much room. You're just trying to put away enough food and water so you can walk home. So emergency supplies, this is how I talk about it. I talk about a stay box. Again, with that idea of we're not going to be able to throw 2 weeks of supplies into our cars and drive out of the city after an emergency. Wherever you're going to stay, whether that's in your home, if you're lucky enough, in your backyard or in the park across the street or whatever, we are basically sheltering in place. We are not going to go anywhere. We can't drive anywhere. The roads are just not going to allow for it. So I talk about a stay box. Have your stuff together and have 2 weeks supply, but you're not going to be able to strap that on your back and walk out with it. If you can make enough trips inside of your house to get all of this and pull it outside, then maybe your best bet is to stay in your house if it's safe enough to keep going back and forth. So I talk about a stay box just to get that idea. It bothers me when people say bug out bag, because to me that sounds like you're going to strap 2 weeks of food and water on your back and you're going to hike somewhere. And I just don't see that happening. So stay box, a get home bag. That's that little bit of supplies you need in order to walk home from wherever you are when the disaster hits. And then a go bag. This is what I call it a go bag. I have one. It's in the closet by the front door, and it's what I would grab in an emergency. Again, either my house is on fire or I'm getting in the back of or the front seat of an ambulance, and I am having to get out very, very quickly. Very different than what's in our stay box. So that's how I talk about it. When I think of a bug out bag, I think of stuff you're going to throw in the back of the car and you're going to drive away because a hurricane is coming or the levee is going to break, something like that, where you've actually got time and you could get somewhere in a vehicle because you're out in the middle of nowhere and nobody's on the roads. But that would not work for Seattle. Yeah, wildfire, floodwaters. Seattle doesn't evacuate. So this is my last topic for tonight. We're going to talk about FEMA and what they can and cannot do. FEMA helps with housing, disaster housing, for about 18 months. This is where you hear about FEMA paying for hotel rooms or the FEMA trailers that have gotten way bad press because of mold and that kind of stuff. FEMA will help with disaster housing for about 18 months with the idea that you are fixing up your home when you're going to be able to move back into it. This is obviously not permanent housing, but they will help with disaster housing up to 18 months, no longer. They do have grants, meaning you don't pay this money back. They are capped at $32,000. What that money is supposed to be used for is expenses not covered by insurance. Let's say your car was, bricks fell on it during the earthquake and you didn't have a car. So it'll help you rent a car for a while. It will help pay for medical, dental expenses that aren't covered by insurance. It helps with funeral expenses. Let's say they're putting you up in a hotel and you don't have any clothes. So that $32,000 can go for, some clothes and some toiletries and a pair of pajamas, that kind of stuff. So that's what that money's for. And then there's loans. This comes through the Small Business Administration. And their loans mean you pay them back. This is not free money. You have to have at least $40,000 in personal property loss or a $200,000 real estate loss. That's great because a $200,000 real estate loss is pretty low in our housing market. Many of us would have $200,000 worth of damage to our home, but this is a loan, meaning you're paying this along with paying your mortgage if you still have a mortgage. It's not free money. They don't make you whole. It is not FEMA's job. It never has been FEMA's job. It's to help you limp along until you figure out what you're going to do. But that's what you're doing. You're limping along. It does not make you whole. So in the foreclosure world, there are two kinds of states. And this is like, one of the 50 states. You're either in a recourse state or you're in a non-recourse state. A recourse state is when you have no recourse, the borrower. You are liable for the debt even if you walk away from your home. That mortgage is still going to follow you. In a non-recourse state, the lender can't do anything except foreclose on the property and take whatever they can get for it. Washington is a non-recourse state, sort of. It's like a weird hybrid between the two types of states that are out there. Here's my example. You still owe $400,000 to the bank. You still have a $400,000 mortgage. There's a big earthquake. You cannot inhabit your house. You don't have the money to fix it up. You don't want to take out a $100,000 loan from the Small Business Administration to fix it up. You're just going to walk away. You stop paying your mortgage, they foreclose on your property, and the bank sells the house for $100,000. That's all they can get out of it. In a pure non-recourse state, the bank absorbs a $300,000 difference and you're free and clear. There's something called a non-judicial foreclosure. That's what the house goes through. A judge is not involved and everything just stops. The bank absorbs the difference between what they could get for the house and your mortgage, and it's done and over with. Well, a judicial foreclosure is an option in Washington. That means a judge gets involved. The bank can put a lien on all your real and personal property. They can garnish your wages and do whatever else they need to do to get that $300,000 back. So if you leave a trail, they can find you and they can get their money back in the state of Washington. So walking away from your mortgage in Washington state would not be that easy. And if you've refinanced your house, everything's different. I'm not a lawyer. Talk to a lawyer.